Hello, stroke warriors, care partners, and trauma survivors everywhere. This is Ralph with Stroke Warrior Radio again, where we celebrate warriors achieving victories every day. I'm your host, Ralph Cortese, and today we're diving into a subject that touches a lot of survivors and care partners, but isn't talked about nearly enough. And intimacy, connection, and sexuality after stroke. Joining us today is Kris Hall. Hi, Kris. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Pretty good week. Pretty good week or day, I should say. You are a trauma-informed therapist and educator whose work focuses on helping people rebuild body trust, emotional safety, and intimacy after trauma. Is that correct?
Um, I'm a I'm a coach, not a therapist.
Okay.
And yeah, the distinction there is very much around like one, background and training, but two, that I really help people focus on moving forward instead of trying to dissect and understand the past.
Oh, I like that. That's a great description. Um, Through your practice at chrishall.ca, you support individuals and couples as they learn to reconnect not just physically, but emotionally and spiritually, correct?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Well, how about if we start with sharing a little bit about your background and what inspired you to focus on this work?
Yeah, of course. So I experienced disconnection myself, right? Like a lot of us start out in our sexuality from a very like spontaneous kind of place, right? We think of that as our natural state. And so I experienced my sexuality from a very young age, very free, very flowing, very adventurous. And then I lost that connection. For me, it was that I all of a sudden started feeling pain where there used to be pleasure. I experienced painful sex and that loss of intimacy, that loss of connection. I felt disconnected from my body, disconnected from my partners. I just all of a sudden couldn't experience pleasure in the same way that I used to be able to, and it broke my heart. And I felt, yeah, I just felt disconnected from who I was. And yeah, I went through ups and downs, but I really focused on this is not going to be my life. I am not going to live this way. I am going to find my way back. There has to be a way back. And I went to every single doctor I could find, and nobody had a solution for me.
Yeah.
But eventually I did find the solution and I worked with them for multiple years to learn their methods. And yeah, turns out I really loved helping others through the same thing. I switched from a career in environmental engineering to sex coaching. Yeah. And yeah, I
Yeah.
was an environmental engineer all through my 20s. And yeah, it didn't feel as aligned for me as this did. And all of a sudden it was just so clear that this was what I was meant to be doing. Um, yeah, so that's how I found my way here.
Wow. Well, and I know in my case, and a lot of others, mine, my differences were based on a trauma, a stroke. Some people go through other things. Um, what does trauma informed mean in the context of intimacy or sexual health?
Yeah, so to me, trauma informed, I mean, one, it's as a practitioner, it's being able to recognize when someone is in a trauma response and being able to handle that with compassion and care and meeting all parts of somebody with love and compassion and safety, giving them a safe space to express and to be who they are. Because if they're not able to feel safe, they're not able to transform or move through that emotion. But trauma informed in the context of sexuality also means acknowledging a full spectrum of human emotions and experiences, right? Because they're all going to influence the way you have sex. Like ignoring the sadness that comes up is never going to get you closer to the pleasure. You have to go through that sadness. If you experience anger, you do have to go through it. And so having a safe environment where you feel safe to be triggered is really the number one way to heal. You're on mute. Sorry, you're on mute. I didn't hear the question.
How does your approach differ from traditional talk therapy or medical rehab programs?
Yeah, so my approach, so yeah, like I said, like talk therapy is very much about like understanding what happened. It serves a very, very important purpose because like sometimes we need to understand it. Like sometimes we have blackouts in our memory. Like I like to call it like big T trauma and little T trauma. So the big T trauma being the ones that are like, if you went to war, that's a big T trauma. If you, yeah, like there's a lot of examples, a lot of like childhood stuff that would be big examples of
Yeah,
big T trauma. And then there's a lot of little T trauma where it's like, this is still a trauma. This is still very much affecting your body, but nobody would point it out and say, like, that's that's what that is. Right? Like repeated signs of non-unconditional love as a child, right? Like that'll slowly work its way into your nervous system and into your way of being. And so yeah, like I find talk therapy is so essential if you're working especially with a big T trauma, right? Like you need to go there, you need to digest it, you need to understand what happened and be able to yeah, just to understand your context. But then after that, sometimes talk therapy isn't the most useful for moving into thriving, right? You go from not okay to okay, but they don't necessarily help you move into thriving. And that's why coaching and somatic experiencing, especially what I do, like moves you forward into that space. And so somatic experiencing is recognizing the fact that trauma is stored in our bodies and it lives in specific places in specific ways. It's so connected, and like one easy way to show that your emotions show up as sensations in certain body parts is, your heart fluttering really fast when you're nervous, or your belly getting butterflies when you're nervous. That's a somatic response. That's your body, your unconscious self talking to you. And so, with somatic experiencing, also called somatic healing or somatic therapy, we can basically talk directly to your subconscious and your unconscious through your body. And because so many of your decisions, so many of your emotions are coming from that unconscious space, this actually allows us to really rewrite your experience and rewire your nervous system, right? Like for me, I was experiencing fear and pain where I wanted there to be pleasure. And so it was a slow process of rewiring that system to slowly teach me again that this stimulus equals pleasure doesn't equal pain. And that all comes from inside the body.
yeah, yeah. What did and you practice? I'm sure you've run across it, but what are some of the common ways that stroke or TBI or those physical traumas can impact intimacy, desire, or body awareness?
Yeah, so this isn't necessarily like my area of expertise. It's more on the
Right.
sexual side, but at the same time, like what I've heard, what I've read is, those that lack of confidence. There's new medications that might be affecting your libido or erectile dysfunction or things like that. There's a fear of the unknown and not knowing, why your pleasure has shifted. There's different mental health challenges. And then there's also the side of being the care partner of the person who experienced the stroke. And so, yeah, those are all very common things I see in my work, right? Like it's not necessarily all stroke victims, but something happened,
Right.
there's been a change in situation, and all of a sudden, okay, we don't know how to relate to our pleasure or intimacy or our partners in the same way. Um, so yeah, I have some suggestions to those things.
Well, I think one of the things that, and one of the reasons I was so excited about talking with you is, when I went through my stroke, number one, there's the physical attributes. My whole left side didn't work. Um, as a matter of fact, I know a person that his left side, I believe, doesn't work, and it goes directly down the middle of his body, including his privates.
Mhm.
I mean, if one side is completely numb and the other side isn't. So there's those physical things that happen in stroke or brain injury or any kind of trauma, I guess, that cause neurological injuries that affect the relationship. And as you said, the confidence. How do you build that back up? Is it through your own physical therapy? Is it emotionally? I mean, it's a topic that I'm not good at. Um, with my stroke. So again, why I'm so excited to talk to you.
Absolutely. Yeah. So there's to build back the confidence, I would say, like, to me at least, like, confidence really comes from feeling able and having a repeat experience of success, right? And so there's the first thing I would recommend is redefining what sex is because I think there's a lot of people who define sex as only, if it's a heterosexual relationship, only penis and vagina, and they have to be touching, or otherwise it's not sex, right? You can really expand the definition of sex to hold so much more. And so that could include kissing, that could include touching, that can include like just the first sense of arousal, and your entire skin is this beautiful huge organ that has so many sensations in it. And so expanding the view to successful sex to meaning, oh, we connected and we touched each other and that's it. And if that helps kind of give you celebrations, give you yeses, give you confirmations that start building up that confidence. So that would be the first thing I would suggest. The
And
second is that, oh, sorry, go
go
ahead.
ahead. No, you go ahead. You have a second.
Well, so I would also really, so there's you can have orgasms from a lot of different parts of your body. And you can have orgasms in like every kind of way you can think of. You can have them from your breasts. You can have a full body energetic orgasm. I've had an orgasm from my armpit. Like they can come in different ways. And so there's techniques I can teach that I do teach to help expand that pleasure, to be able to bring the pleasure out in new ways and to yeah start to learn to orgasm in different ways. And so that's how I would suggest if somebody especially was like, didn't have the same functionality in their body, if there was any sort of paralysis that happened, that would be the new route is like, well, like we're going to change the definition of orgasm and we're going to, yeah, expand that definition.
Does 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 it always have to, and for me, I see a difference in intimacy and sex, which can be combined also. So I think it's a three-prong approach there. But does that intimacy or sex always have to be orgasm?
No, of course not. Yeah, the number one thing is also to say, let's take the goal of orgasm out of the picture. Orgasm is not some sort of be all and end all. Let's take that off the plate. It takes off the pressure, right? It's all about taking the pressure off. Because like pressure leads to stress and puts us in fight or flight, and then we can't relax and actually receive and have a pleasurable experience, right? Our bodies aren't wired to experience pleasure unless we feel safe. If we have that, alarm bell ringing in the back of our head going, run away from the lion, we can't stop and have sex. We're just like, that's not how it works. So yeah, the taking the goal of orgasm off the plate. And the reason I mention orgasm is just because having orgasms is really one of the main goals that a lot of people come to me with. They want to experience bigger, better, or orgasms at all. And it's really like it's a useful goal because if you're having orgasms, or it's a useful goal to like keep in mind, just because if you're having orgasms, it does mean that like there's some alignment within your body and you are, you know, wiring in the right direction for pleasure. But that being said, having an orgasm every single time is absolutely not necessary and should not be the goal.
And there's different levels too, right? I mean, if you look at it, just a simple touch of the hand to the face. I mean, that in itself is orgasmic, I guess, but it's also satisfying. And isn't satisfaction a goal as well?
Yeah,
Simple
absolutely.
satisfaction.
Yeah, connection. My goal is always connection.
Oh, I like, yeah, good description, better than nice, I was saying. How does sense of loss or identities shifts play into intimacy?
Yeah, so identity is really important because and it's funny in my work like on the somatic side, somatic experiencing and therapy, I also work with parts work, which basically says that there are a bunch of different identities within us. So one identity a lot of people have heard recently is like the inner child, right? The inner child is an identity. The inner sex goddess could be another one. The inner warrior, the inner mother or inner father, right? Those are all parts of us that sometimes come out and are expressed. But our main identity, the part of us that we are like, this is me, I like that part of you that feels so deeply like you inside. Your brain is wired to feel quite afraid and off-put if anything in your environment or your experience doesn't agree and affirm who you are. And so if we've cemented inside of ourselves that we have this identity that's us, right? Like for me, it was, okay, I'm a sexual adventurous being. And every time I couldn't confirm that identity through my experience, I felt so lost. I felt like I was losing myself. And I was just so scared. And so this plays so much into intimacy because we're so vulnerable in intimacy. We're so open. We like the goal would be to surrender, right? To be able to just let go of everything and be so open with your partner. And that's so it's so vulnerable. And so your identity when it shifts or when you lose it, all of a sudden how do you surrender when you don't know what you're being, right? Like it just has this whole fear-based factor that comes up and makes it really hard to surrender into sex.
Yeah, I mean, with a stroke, and I can only relate to me, is there's you've lost yourself. You've lost your physical self, which in turn is going to be losing your emotional self to a certain extent. I mean, I sat in front of a bottle of Jack Daniels and my pain pills a couple times during early stroke recovery. That personality part is something that changes. How do you address that in your approach in therapies?
That change in identity.
Yeah.
Yeah, so a lot of the times what I do is I empower a certain identity. So like think of identities, sometimes you can think of them as like clothing that you could put on, right? Like you can really work with a certain part of yourself to say, okay, like your inner boss, let's say. That's the person you bring into the office with you. You go, "Okay, I'm my inner boss today," right? Like I'm leaving my mother personality at home. I'm leaving my spouse personality at home. My inner child definitely, hopefully and I'm embodying my inner boss, right? And if you're really in touch with these different parts of you, like maybe you know that it lives in your throat and you like, tap on your throat a bit and you go, okay, we're embodying this. We're gonna breathe into it a bit. We're gonna hold our shoulders high and we're walking in as the boss. And so being able to shift. So part of my work would be helping people shift into a new identity. So developing and empowering a new identity that takes on that role. So the part of you that is coming online and being there when you're having sex, when you're being intimate, and teaching it to take on that responsibility, teaching it a new way of being.
Okay. There's, there's, I think in the physical recovery from trauma, physical trauma in particular, there's, and don't you find that a step process works, or is it a all or nothing process? I mean, a lot of us, I can relate to, I can't do this anymore. I can't have sex anymore. I can't, I'm afraid I'm going to have another stroke. I'm afraid I'm going to have another heart attack. Um, don't you think that there's maybe a way that people can understand and steps instead of going all or nothing?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, I would encourage, yeah, I would always encourage small steps and starting with starting with meditation. Meditation and being able to drop into that space for yourself is honestly one of the best tools for having better intimacy and better sex. Being able to just clear your mind, get into get into a place of safety and get into a place of calm. Because that's where you want to start intimacy from, is feeling really grounded in yourself, in your body, in your safety, and comforting yourself and telling yourself it's gonna be okay no matter what. I'm still gonna be me. Like nothing that happens here is going to impact my own identity. I am still me. That's where I'd start.
Now, one of the fascinating things I've noticed in your what I've read about you and is the body awareness, safety, and consent. You talk a lot about body trust. Can you explain what that means and how survivors can begin rebuilding it after an injury or trauma?
Yeah, absolutely. So, body trust is so much based around feeling safe. Safety is a feeling, right? It's a feeling inside of us that goes, okay, I'm safe now. So, one way to check that, or one way to just bring up that feeling of safety, is to maybe close your eyes and think of a place that makes you feel safe. It could be your grandmother's house, it could be your parents' house, it could be your house, it could be a forest, anywhere, right? Wherever makes you feel very peaceful, safe, and calm. And note how you feel in your body. So when I say sensations, I mean, is there tingling somewhere? Do you feel a sense of warmth? Do you feel a sense of relaxedness? Right? Those are all sensations that your body is telling you, oh, I feel safe. So you're thinking it, it's going into your body, and then you're able to really embody that safety. And so practicing that lets you know, oh, this is what safety feels like. And so I'm saying that because trust. So, like, one way that I rebuilt trust for myself, it's a good example, because a lot of my pain came from penetration. And
Yeah.
so, what I did and what I was taught to do is ask before entering every single time, even if it's me, even if it's like I'm inserting something into
Okay.
myself, especially if it's somebody else inserting something into me. It's that you have to stop, you have to pause and say, is it okay? And you listen for a yes. And that rebuilds trust. So in the same way, you could use it for any part that your body doesn't feel safe to do. So if you feel a tension before you go into any intimate experience, sitting, calming yourself, maybe meditating a bit, bringing up that feeling of safety and saying, is it okay if we connect? Is it okay if we have this intimate experience? And you have to listen to your body saying yes or no. And if it says no, you have to not do it. That's the most
Yeah.
important part.
Yeah. Yeah. It's fascinating to me that you combine the three. I mean, body awareness, safety, and consent. How do you help individuals or couples reestablish comfort with touch and vulnerability?
Yeah, so that is all about again, it's all about safety. It's all about communication, though. Really knowing that you can say anything to your partner and they're going to receive you just as you are. And so opening up those conversations well before the intimate times and being able to have those conversations right at the beginning too. So like I almost never jump into like we're not teenagers, we're not young 20 somethings. We don't just go, "Ooh, I feel sexy. Let's just start kissing. It'll just happen." It's like, "No, no, no, let's slow down. We have some time. This is our intention." And like really starting to focus first on intention. What is our intention for today? Is it just to feel pleasure together? Is it to feel loving energy together? Like taking all other goals off the table and being really clear on what you want to experience. And then establishing boundaries, telling the other person where you feel nervous, where you feel excited, what would feel really expansive to you, what would feel really scary. And and I would always suggest going to like there's your edge, right? There's your edge and then there's your growth zone and then there's your like, okay, this is overwhelm. So going into that space, just stepping into that space of growth, but then staying really on the edge where you feel comfortable and going back between growth and comfort. And in that way, you'll slowly start to grow your boundaries.
How do you define intimacy beyond sex? Most people think of sex as penetration. And why is that distinction important in recovery?
Yeah, so this kind of goes back to like opening up our definition of sex because if we define it as something very, very restrictive, then we might think, "Oh, I haven't had sex in ages," or like, "Oh, like we're not having sex anymore," or anything like that. But if you open the definition, all of a sudden it's like, "Yeah, we had sex yesterday. It was great and it felt pleasurable." And like that that expands what you're able to do. Or even, you get to enter into the conversation of like, well, what do you want to experience? Like, do you want to see what it feels like to just concentrate on your arm? Like some people, like when they get deeper into like tantric practices, start to be able to like have some of their most pleasurable experiences by lightly touching their arm. Like there's realms of experience and techniques out there that really encourage anything to be pleasurable. And so it really helps to open up the intimacy.
How can single survivors begin reconnecting with themselves emotionally and sensually after trauma?
Sorry, what was the first part of that again?
How can single survivors
Mhm.
begin reconnecting with themselves?
Absolutely. So I would actually suggest this for all people. One of my number one things I would say is masturbation is medicine. It truly
Oh,
is. Um, and
I've
I also
seen that
use,
on your post, yes.
yeah. And so like I mean, I also use the word pleasure practice. But same. And what I would suggest is building up your own pleasure practice. And those instances of trusting your body really do need to be done alone before you do them with a partner because you need to trust yourself first and foremost. You need to know that you're not going to cross your own boundaries, that you're not going to do something just because you think you should, even that when your body is saying no. And like again, this comes from personal experience. My body did not trust me after a while because I had done things that it didn't want in moments where it was trying to say no and I forced it to say yes. And if you do that enough times, even when it's unconscious, you end up with a pattern where your body just doesn't trust you and seizes up. But yeah, so the pleasure practice, highly recommend everybody doing their own pleasure practice, even when they're partnered, because you first need to build up that confidence and that intimacy with yourself. And so, um, and the difference between like I wouldn't recommend using a vibrator or using porn if at all possible. Really just giving yourself a certain amount of time and seeing where you can find pleasure in your body through touch, through like non-vibrating tools are really helpful. And then yeah, there's a couple holistic sex tools that I'd love to share with you that are also yeah, really, really expansive.
Okay.
So these ones are first is the breath. The breath is one of the best ways to expand pleasure in your body. And breathing with an open mouth, if you can, really starts to bring the energy up. And then breathing with a closed mouth actually brings the energy back down. So if you need like more regulating, um, more parasympathetic space, then you would breathe with your mouth closed. But breathing deeply is what expands the pleasure and what moves it around your body. And it's pretty amazing what happens when you start to just focus in right on the breath. So if there's one thing to do is just touch your body, breathe deeply, and see what happens. I would also recommend movement. Like and like moving your hips or moving your body in a certain way that feels good to you. This again like wakes your body up and tells it it's time for pleasure. Another one is sound. So sound, I think some like there's a lot of confusion, especially because of the porn industry, I think, that sound is performative, but it's actually very deeply healing. It's a somatic tool to release
For
and to feel
example,
more. Yep.
for example,
For example,
for sound anyway.
yeah, for sound, like a good example to think about this is if you just take a deep breath right now. So take a deep breath in through your nose and then relax and sigh it out through the mouth. That is a release. And that release that you feel when you sigh, that's an example of like, oh, yeah, I do feel different. And doing more and more of that releases. And the more you can kind of release, the more you can feel, the more you can let in. Because I always think about it like there's always an output and an input. And sometimes there's so much that we've collected that we're holding on to that we haven't had a chance to properly release, which means we can't really bring anything else in.
Yeah,
Um,
one of the
yeah.
things with survivors that I associate with is that fear. I'm going to go back to the steps and that fear of functionality,
Hmm.
of whether you're going to be able to get an erection, whether you're going to be able to get excited about having sex with your husband or whatever. I mean, how do you build that confidence in your functionality back?
Hmm.
Good one, right?
Yeah. Slowly.
Yeah.
Slow is key. With patience, with a lot of love for yourself. And also there's there's a really important part of somatic experiencing where we never we never place any blame on different parts of ourselves. We have to like even though like okay, I'll use myself as example again. Like there's this fear, right? There's this fear that's literally like covering me, especially like down there. It's coating me, and I need to love that fear. I need to thank that fear. I know it sounds so counterintuitive. I also need to accept that fear. I need to accept that it's there and love it for what it's done for me because chances are it's trying to protect me. It's trying to protect me from the pain and whatever else it thinks I might feel if it doesn't go, no, we're not doing this. So it's like, so if somebody's experiencing erectile dysfunction or anything like that, like it's again, it sounds really counterintuitive, but accepting it and loving yourself through it is the first step. Giving yourself so much compassion, saying it's okay, and we're just going to see what else pleasure arises. Because the more we blame it, the more we send it more fear, send it more of those harder emotions. It's going to hold on to that, and it's going to come up more and more every time, right? Like if the more we get scared of what's happening in our bodies, the more it tends to happen. So yeah, it's really counterintuitive, but it's really important.
Well, I can agree with that because the physical therapy part of it, you have that as well. You have that fear of, am I going to fall? Am I going to, these kind of things. So there's, our catchphrase, catch the wave, warriors achieving victories every day. It's those little victories. And this is an area that we don't think about enough, that I think we, as survivors, need to think about a little bit more. I mean, that fear is huge. But once you start doing that stuff, it becomes better and better every time. Don't you
Yeah,
find that?
absolutely. And it's really about like focus on 1%. Focus on getting 1% less of whatever it is that's happening. And don't expect full results, and don't yeah, set your goals just one titch higher and one titch higher. And just be really, really patient and loving with yourself. The more you can love
And
yourself through it. Yeah.
patience is something that is definitely learned.
Hmm.
We've pretty much ate up most of our time. I would love to come back and do a second show with you. Is there anything in particular you want to add for today, or would you be willing to do another show?
Yeah, I would love to do another show. Um, yeah, I think what I would love to say is this, if we're celebrating these small victories, here are a couple ways you can get a couple small victories. So, first is that meditation. Practice meditating for 2 minutes a day and see and just explore like what would I want to bring in? What do I want to experience? Because one thing I always work with is desires, right? Like what do you want? Not what you don't want, but what do you want? And journaling too. Journaling about what it is that you want to feel. And it's so common that people
Yeah,
don't know what they want.
yeah, that's true. It's so funny because this area is in my physical therapy, occupational therapy, all of that. I have journals. I have an angry journal and I have a gratitude journal. I journal every day. I'd never thought of it for this kind of for intimacy or sex. There's so many parallels that because it's sex, people are afraid to talk about it. You know,
Yeah,
generally that we're not allowed to, and these, what do they call that? A polite society, you
I
know.
know. I don't know.
So.
Like I live in Canada. We're too polite for our own good.
Well, I will talk with you after and we'll set up a second show because I do have a lot more questions about reframing intimacy, support, education resources. But in the meantime, um, for trauma-informed support and education, they can visit your website or social at www, what is it?
www.krishall.ca.
Okay,
Um, yeah, and you can reach out to me. We can have a free 1 hour call just to chat about what it is that you're looking for or what it is you're having troubles with. Yeah, you can hear me more on my podcast. I'll have what she's having. And yeah, I also have a free gift for you if anybody would like to try out some of these tools on their own and create their own pleasure practice. I have a 15-minute audio that really just introduces you to those things and helps you drop into your body. So yeah, I'd love to post that as well as a resource for you all.
wonderful. Do you do a lot of your therapies virtually or in person only or
Yeah, I do most of my one-on-one work virtually, so I can take you on from anywhere in the world.
wonderful, wonderful. I will share that on our site as well. Um, thank you for today and we'll get a second show set up. Um, for everyone listening, remember, recovery includes every part of you, not just the physical therapies, the speech or anything, but there is an intimacy and sexual component too. Um, for all of you out there, catch the wave. Warriors achieve victories every day. Thank you, Kris.
Thank you.